Right. I'm not sure if I've got the title exactly right because we've had lots of thoughts about it and I'm still trying to remember what all these terms mean. But I'm very pleased to have Sue Butcher on this afternoon to talk around all these digitize and then another word or another bit at the end. Sue is the Director of Communications at consultancy Just Practising Limited. She originally trained as an architect and managed 3 successive architects' practices and has also worked at the University of Liverpool School of Architecture. Sue served on the promotion team of BIM 4M2 and was the first vice chair of women in BIM and has also spent 2 years as a non-exec on the UK BIM Alliance board. In 2018, she chaired the cross-industry working group that produced the seminal report, A Fresh Way Forward for Product Data, State of the Nation. The nation has moved on since that report in 2018, and I will stop sharing. I'm very pleased to introduce Sue to talk about the latest news in that. Thank you.
Hello everyone, what an amazing list of initiatives that started off this event. Yep, it's quite appropriate that there should be so many. Right, I'm going to talk to you today about popcorn. One Saturday in the year 2000, some moviegoers in Chicago were surprised to be handed free popcorn when they entered a cinema. Half the popcorn was in large tubs and half was in huge buckets, and it was all stale. Yes, it was an experiment to see whether people with a huge supply of popcorn would eat more than those with a very large supply of popcorn, and of course the answer was yes, they did. People with the larger buckets ate 53% more popcorn than the people with the medium-sized tubs, even though the popcorn was stale. Now, there's a reason for telling you this. Obviously, it's a story from a book called Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard, and I want to thank Darren Lester for telling me about that book. But the interesting thing about this story isn't that people eat stale popcorn, or even that people don't accept that they are eating more because of the container size. The interesting thing is that it is possible to get people to eat less just by changing the size of the container. It really is that simple. So sometimes we think change is about people's intransigence when it's actually situational. If you approach a problem thinking you have to convince someone of a complex argument, like eat healthily, the challenge will seem difficult, too difficult for some. However, there may be a much simpler situational way to have a much bigger effect, like use smaller containers. It would be simple to think that people eat more popcorn because they're gluttons, when actually it was simply because they had a bigger container. And it would be simple to think that product data in the construction industry isn't organised in a structured way because manufacturers are lazy. In fact, they aren't. So don't mistake resistance to change with a lack of clarity about what needs to be done. And it's in response to this challenge that the IAT is publishing a plain language guide to product data for manufacturers. How did this project begin? Well, Duncan mentioned it. 2 years ago, 12 of us wrote a report about the state of the nation for construction product data for the UK BIM Alliance. And you can download the report from this short link here. It describes the nature of the disease, if you like, of construction product data and why it doesn't travel through the cycle of construction, some of the blind alleys the industry had been led up, what the barriers were to the adoption of structured product data. But coming back to situational, for any specific type of act to make changes, the problem as we described it in this report was just too complex. So that's how Rick Hartwig of the IET brought some of the key members of that working group together, including 2 major contributors to the new data standards, ISO 23386 and 7, to look at the problem in another way. But before we talk about that, let's talk about a few buzzwords. In the BIM community, it is very fashionable to talk about hashtag digital transformation. But what is it? Digital transformation is about creating new business applications for data, new business models. For example, AI-powered predictive maintenance, 3D printing, custom manufacturing, the Internet of Things, all give an option for new business models, and of course platform DFMA, which is very enthused about by MHCLG. But how does one get to digital transformation? Before you can benefit from digital transformation, you need to implement digitalisation. which is about making digitized information work for you in your existing business, benefiting from things like e-commerce, product tracking with object identifiers, or contributing to the digital twin using your own business. But before that, of course, you have to have digitized your information. Digitisation is turning your analog and disconnected data into connected digital form. It's about connecting up your sources of information so that they can work for your business more effectively and more efficiently. And in order to benefit from the digital transformation of construction, we need to digitise information first. One of the abiding images used to argue for BIM in construction is the analog O&M manual, or building owner's manual. One of my contacts worked in fire safety. He sent me quite a lot of pictures of O&M manuals yesterday, and he's dismayed that on even the most forward-looking and innovative projects, including BIM projects, the manuals are still analog. Why? Because the information provided is analog, or of course requested as analog. We're talking rubbish in, rubbish out here. And what does this mean for the golden thread, the trumpeted buzzword golden thread? The golden thread will not work without digitisation in manufacturing. The explanatory notes to the draft Building Safety Bill, published by MHCLG on the 20th of July last year, defined the golden thread of information as fire and structural safety building information held digitally to specific standards. These standards will include requirements around robust information management and keeping the information up to date. The golden thread will ensure that those responsible for the building have the required information to manage building safety during and throughout the life cycle of the building. Something that we can all aspire to, absolutely. It isn't that manufacturers don't use data already. They're some of the most innovative companies in construction. They certainly know how to make money, and they invest a huge amount in R&D. But these processes are internal, and many construction product manufacturers don't supply digitised information to the supply chain, whether it be to third-party platforms, architects, contractors, distributors, installers, or customers of any kind. And that's because their digital information is in silos within their businesses and not connected in ways that would enable them to do that. So what's the purpose of our project? We are writing a plain language guide for the CEOs of manufacturers of all sizes and their advocates. We want them to think about why they should worry about product data, what the common mistakes are which might lead them to poor investment decisions, what their priority should be, and we're going to provide a step-by-step suggested process for how product data could be digitised. The IET is supporting this project, but we're also supported by the UK BIM Alliance, by BEMA, the Electrotechnical Trade Association, and by IBM. What is unusual about the Plain Language Guide project is the open way that we're producing it. Our aim is to produce independent, impartial information that is free to access and free to use. We are not promoting a specific platform or service, and I should say that again, we are not promoting a specific platform or service. We are neutral and non-commercial, and the guide will be written in plain English. The IET will be hosting all the content on their website, and we're really proud of the support that we've received for this process from individuals and organisations, and thank you very much if you've already been involved. Now, in order to be as open as possible and to get as much feedback and interaction as possible, we've been publishing a series of articles and hosting a series of open Zoom calls about each one, which anyone can attend and contribute to. And this process has helped us in the diagnosis of the disease, if you like. And I'm going to give you a very brief summary of these articles. You can read them on the links on each of the slides, and also there are the recordings of the calls at the bottom of every article, so you can see everything. The first one is an introduction, and we talk about how data is stored and shared and how this can create risk. We argue that data should be structured, secure, verified and interoperable. We talk about a logical data model. Most manufacturers don't supply structured data, but there are motivators for change. For example, Grenfell, the building safety regulator, increased risk of prosecution. And we talk about the responsibilities of manufacturers. Manufacturers cannot be responsible for what happens to their products, but they must be responsible for how they communicate about their products. And that's sort of really timely, given the evidence to the Grenfell Phase 2 inquiry at the moment. The second article is about standards. We argue that manufacturers should structure their product data, they should make it available, and they should connect data to products. Because if products are traceable, they are credible, and so is the manufacturer. And we share some examples in that article, and we would really welcome if you would want to share some with us. And we also introduced the 2 new standards, ISO 23386 and 7, which I know that Paul is going to be talking about a bit in his presentation. Then we moved on to the myths about comparing construction products. We dispel 7 myths in this article, including that specifiers don't want to compare products, and it's surprising how many people will tell you that, when actually it's essential. That product comparison isn't always about human relationships, that it isn't really difficult to compare, and it's possible if you do it in the right way. We talk about e-commerce, which is often seen as comparison by price, but only if you think that e-commerce equals Amazon. Amazon is a commodifier and therefore will always reduce things to price, but designers need more detailed information, as we all know. We talk about illegal imports, your brand's online presence, and supplying information to third-party platforms as well, which took us on to the 4th article, where we talk about the ownership and control of product data. Product data is an asset, and as a result, many people are competing to manage your information. And we talk about the risks of using third-party data services, such as walled gardens, systems that are tailored only for a niche audience, lack of interoperability, and disproportionate cost compared to benefits. But we say if you can control your data, you can control your risks. And that's what we're really aiming for. And that's what will motivate manufacturers to actually get involved in it. The 5th article was definitely the most controversial so far. It's about why having BIM objects did not make you BIM ready. Now, why did it happen that 3D BIM objects became the be-all and end-all for manufacturers? We think that there was a focus on marketing rather than data management, and that was budget related. That resulted in overly detailed, heavily rendered 3D objects, and combined that with aggressive selling, and it leads to a neglect and lack of structure in the data contained within the 3D objects. And we explain to manufacturers that being in the model doesn't actually mean that you're in the spec, no matter what a provider might tell you. And it's a very painful experience to admit that you've made a failed investment decision quite often. But this article is all about saying that we all make mistakes, and the important thing is to acknowledge them and learn from them. And we argue that manufacturers should be thinking about information models, not 3D renders, because geometry is only a subset of data. The 6th article talks about a system of gathering, coordinating and organising your product data if you're a manufacturer. And it also talks about the risks of unconnected data sources and the benefits of change, how to find out where your data is and who is using it and how it's managed. And we describe a possible strategy for creating a interconnected product data system. And then in the beginning of December, we published our 7th article, which was about Grenfell. Now, this was one of the most difficult articles for us to write, and we did it by telling a story about a product data journey twice, the first time with structured data and the second time without. And we used that to talk about the upcoming legislation, the competency frameworks, and the Code for Construction Product Information and other marketing integrity initiatives for manufacturers. And we explain how and why structured product data is the essential missing link. It isn't about being guilt-tripped into action. People need to know what they have to do, and that process has to be simple and actionable by every manufacturer, including SMEs. We know that change is coming, but when it happens, we want manufacturers to be ready, and that's what our guide is about. So the key message of all the articles we've written is that as a manufacturer, the data you need to provide already exists in your systems. You won't have to provide anything you don't already have, you just need to put it in an interoperable form. And by that I mean a machine-readable format that can be transferred between software types and compared with other data about similar products. We say that manufacturers and suppliers should not be deceived into thinking of BIM data as different from the data they already have. It's just data. And remember that the data about a manufacturer's products belongs to them. You made the products, you made the data, so keep control of the data and share it. We hope to publish our plain language guide, the treatment plan, if you like, later in the spring. It is the suggested treatment plan. It might not suit everyone, but we hope it will help raise the topic and set out some principles which manufacturers can tailor to their business. There are probably alternatives and there may be contraindications or reasons why you wouldn't do it this way, which is fine. But we hope that the majority of manufacturers across the industry who are not already structuring their product data, which will be most of them, will be able to use the guide to get started on the basics, and then we'll start reaping the benefits, as will we all. Now, last week we had an extra call, and this is because of the Code for Construction of Product Information, which Duncan's already mentioned, which has been it's a consultation document produced by the Marketing Integrity Group, which is part of the government's steering group on competencies, which is part of the whole Hackett process. And the code mentions about information being clear, accurate, up-to-date, accessible and unambiguous. And it's hard to disagree with that. And it also sets out the what you should do in 11 clauses. And then the manufacturer will be able to register and to be assessed and receive a badge that confirms that they comply with the code. Now, the code is not prescriptive about how these things should be achieved. But there will be an assessment process which is being set up by Constructing Excellence and a complaints process. And during the call, at which a third of the attendees were manufacturers and another third were marketers who work with manufacturers, there were an awful lot of questions and answers from the chair and vice chair of the Marketing Integrity Group who were kind enough to join us. And at the end, we asked the audience what they felt about the code, and this is what they responded. You could summarise this into necessary but could do better. Now, we believe that implementing this code is possible, but not effectively or efficiently without structured data. And there are quite a lot of hurdles to overcome before we get to that point. And it doesn't have a structured data approach yet. It does not recommend structuring your data. Now, the consultation ends on the 31st of March and it's open to users of all data as well as manufacturers. So please take a look. Again, there's a link via that short link on the top and join in and say what you think about it. There will be hopefully a lot of response and that will be acted on. OK, so we'd like to know what you think about what we're doing. You can read all the articles. And we'd be grateful if you'd invite manufacturers to read the articles too. You can comment on all the blog post course if you set up an account with the IET, which is free, and you can use the hashtag Manufacturers PLG on Twitter and LinkedIn, where you can see what other people are saying about the project and join in the conversation. I'd like to thank you very much. I'd just like to end with this message.